So this is the normal procedure that occurs before an ICAC report is handed down or released to the public. The copies are handed to me. We'll then have a brief discussion about these in private, and then I will place my signature on the documents.
The most fascinating, the opening in the report here is the criminal charges. Now when I say criminal charges, it's recommended criminal charges. So the key thing is that Eddie Obeid and Ian McDonald, both former ministers, have been recommended that the Director of Public Prosecutions look at charging them with criminal offences. Also Eddie Obeid's son Moses. And what's fascinating is that some of the most influential figures in the mining industry have also been recommended for criminal charges. They include Travis Duncan, John McGuigan, John Atkinson, and a merchant banker called Richard Poole. Also John Kinghorn, formerly of Rams Home Loans, has also been recommended. Look, they are looking at conspiracy to defraud, which can be a 10-year jail term, I think. The businessmen are looking at breaches of the Corporations Act, which can be a $220,000 fine or a term in jail. What happens now is that the DPP has to do their own investigation and consider whether there is enough to charge these people. So even though the charges have been recommended, they may or may not eventuate. The other fascinating thing about the report is that the Commissioner has asked the Tax Office to look at the Obeids and has also asked the New South Wales Crime Commission to see whether there is action available to recover assets from the Obeids. So that's something that would make the Obeids very worried, the idea of the New South Wales Crime Commission looking at their holdings. I was surprised that there are so many people who have had criminal charges recommended against them. We've got, I think there's about, 7 or 8 all up, which is not just corrupt conduct findings, going one step further and saying criminal charges should be considered against these people. That is almost unheard of in a corruption inquiry report.
I've been absolutely disgusted by what I've seen in the ICAC hearings so far, and my view is very simple. Anyone who is responsible for corruption or illegal behaviour should face the full force of the law.
What's really interesting in this inquiry was that Eric Roosendaal in 2007 was the state's roads minister. Despite that, he accepted ownership of a brand new or almost new Honda CR-V car without signing any papers, registered in somebody else's name, and drove away from the dealership without thinking twice. Now, the ICAC hasn't made a finding about that, but it does raise it as a curious fact in this entire affair. Ultimately, the Corruption Commission accepted Eric Roosendaal's version of events, that ultimately he was lacking in good judgment. Eric Roosendaal is definitely breathing a sigh of relief. The Corruption Commission went into some detail about the vast business enterprises being run by the Obeid family, and the fact that Eric Roosendaal, who was the Roads Minister, the state's Ports Minister and the Treasurer, was actually in a position to do several favours for the Obeid family, though there is no evidence that he did. The ICAC's found that Moses Obeid clearly arranged an almost $11,000 benefit for Mr Roosendaal in order that he might one day call on one of those favours.
Mr McDonald, how often did you use an atlas to decide mining?
This is one big unlucky coincidence, is it?
The former Energy Minister, Ian McDonald, engaged in corrupt conduct in relation to a meeting that was held between him, the businessman Ron Medic, and the former boxer Lucky Gattalari at the Tuscany restaurant in Sydney in 2009. The Independent Commission Against Corruption has also said that it will seek advice from the Director of Public Prosecutions about whether to bring criminal charges against Mr McDonald, Mr Medic and Mr Gattalari in relation to that meeting. Each of those criminal charges, which relates to either corruptly accepting a benefit or offering a benefit as a reward to Mr McDonald, carries a potential jail term of 7 years. The meeting was arranged between Mr McDonald and Mr Medic and Mr Gattalari in order for the businessman and the boxer to be able to get in front of the executives of state-owned power companies in order to pitch the wares of their private company River Corp, which was struggling to get government contracts. The Commission heard in public evidence earlier this year that Mr McDonald agreed to the meeting and also requested that another party, the then owner of the Tuscany restaurant in Leichhardt where the meeting was held, organise for quote unquote a girl to be provided for him after the dinner meeting. The Commission has found that Mr McDonald was driven to the Four Seasons Hotel by Mr Gattalari's driver, where he was handed a hotel room key, and in that hotel room was waiting a Chinese prostitute by the name of Tiffany. The Commission's found that Mr McDonald met Tiffany in the hotel room. While they didn't engage in any sexual activity, Mr McDonald was found to have roughly kissed Tiffany, and certainly Tiffany told the Commission that she understood that she was expected to provide sex to Mr McDonald.
I want to see the book thrown at all the people who have been found to have acted corruptly. These individuals have undermined public confidence in good government and the honest, hard-working members of this Parliament.
Today's corruption findings against Eddie Obeid and Ian McDonald are undoubtedly more damage for the troubled New South Wales branch of the Australian Labor Party. While the opposition leader John Robertson and indeed the Prime Minister Kevin Rudd have preemptively moved against both Mr Obeid and Mr McDonald by expelling them from the party in anticipation of today's findings, the stench that surrounds their conduct in office while Labor held government in New South Wales is going to be very hard to shake.